The Wild West is one of the most iconic periods in American history. It conjures up images of cowboys and Indians, lawmen and outlaws, adventure and intrigue, and more. It also lays claim to some of the best and coolest guns ever made. So let's take a quick look at 5 of the most iconic guns from the Wild West. First up is the Colt Model 1851 Navy revolver. Despite having Navy in its name, that does not mean that it was specifically meant for that branch of service. Instead, it's a caliber designation. 36 caliber for the Navy, 44 for the Army. The 6-shot cylinder was loaded with loose powder and ball in a paper cartridge, which was rammed into the cylinder using the loading lever mounted under the barrel. Once percussion caps were placed on the cones on the back of the cylinder, the revolver was ready to fire. The gun was incredibly popular. More than 250,000 Colt Navy pistols were manufactured in a 22-year period, which comes out to almost 31 revolvers a day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. Even when cartridge guns came onto the market, many still clung to their cap and ball guns like the 1851 Navy. Part of it could be that the guns were familiar and that they didn't want to change. The other part was the added expense of either buying a new gun altogether or paying to have their 1851 converted. Wild Bill Hickok is known to have carried a pair of percussion 1851 Colt Navies long after the advent of metallic cartridges. Next up is the Winchester Model 1866 lever-action rifle. The Model 1866 was the direct descendant of the Henry rifle and was the first lever-action to bear the Winchester name. Now that alone makes it worthy of this list, but there are other reasons too. Designed by Nelson King, a wooden handguard mounted in front of the receiver and a loading gate on the right side of the receiver were the principal alterations made in creating what became the Model 1866 and distinguished it from the earlier Henry rifle. Because of its distinctive brass frame, it was often called the Yellow Boy on the American frontier, and Sioux Chief Sitting Bull is believed to have owned one of these guns. Chambered for the 44 rimfire cartridge, the rifle versions and musket versions held 17 rounds, while the carbines held 13 rounds. Approximately 170,000 of these guns were made between 1866 and 1898. Next up is the Winchester Model 1873 lever-action rifle. Sometimes called the gun that won the West, the Model 1873 was the first Winchester to use centerfire cartridges as opposed to rimfire, and to have an iron frame as opposed to brass with a removable side plate. The gun was a hit almost immediately, and endorsements rolled in for the rifle. In 1875, Buffalo Bill Cody said, "I pronounce your improved Winchester the boss." The gun came in a variety of different standard configurations, including the 20-inch round barrel carbine, 24-inch octagonal round barrel rifle, and the 30-inch round barrel musket. Standard calibers included 44-40, 38-40, and 32-20. Because the Model 1873 fired pistol caliber cartridges, many owners benefited from having the convenience of only having to carry one caliber for both rifle and revolver. Between 1884 and 1904, 22 rimfire was also an additional caliber, with less than 20,000 of those made in that configuration and caliber. All told, about 720,000 Model 1873s were made between 1873 and 1919, the period regarded as the gun's heyday. Next up is the Colt Single Action Army revolver. The Single Action Army, also known as the SAA, Peacemaker, and Colt 45, is, along with the Winchester 1873, considered by many to be the gun that won the West. When combined with the 45 Colt self-contained metallic cartridge, it was a match made in heaven. The Single Action Army is, as its name suggests, a single-action revolver with a 6-round cylinder made specifically for metallic cartridges. The gun was originally designed for the U.S. government service revolver trials of 1872 by Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company. However, the Peacemaker still had to beat out the Smith & Wesson Model 3 revolver, which was also in service in parts of the military. While the top-break S&W revolver design was seen as superior by some, the Colt ultimately won out and became the iconic design. The Single Action Army has since been offered in dozens of calibers and many barrel lengths over the decades, but its overall design and appearance has pretty much stayed the same since it was introduced in 1873. Next is the Smith & Wesson Model 3 revolver. As was mentioned before, Smith & Wesson's Model 3 was the other big military contender against the Colt Single Action Army. It was a beefier gun and was faster to load and unload because of its top break action. All of the spent cartridges could be ejected at once instead of having to be individually cycled and removed. Despite this, the Colt design prevailed partly because of ammunition logistics. The S&W was chambered in their proprietary 45 S&W, which wasn't compatible with the Single Action Army and 45 Colt, but the Colt could fire the Smith & Wesson cartridge. The military had actually decided to go with the Smith & Wesson design in its cartridge, but because they already had so much 45 Colt ammo in their supply chain already, the Army stuck with the Single Action Army, and the rest is history. Even though the military didn't embrace the Model 3, civilians did, as well as some foreign governments. The gun was popular in Japan, and there were also target shooters and outlaws like Jesse James and John Wesley Hardin, who were both known to have owned Model 3s. So there you go. A quick and dirty look at 5 iconic guns of the Wild West. Original examples of each can be costly, but luckily there are high-quality, affordable reproductions available of each one so that you can channel your inner outlaw or lawman.